Hello, Peter Saturday from Universal Dork, and I'm back again in the new year, 2025. Can you believe that it is 2025? Because when I was a kid, back in the 80s and stuff, watching films that took place in 2025, that was some majestic sci-fi shit that was going on. Flying cars, Star Trek, they were going in the movies all over the place. Everyone was friends with each other. All the different alien races had made contact. We were, so far along technologically. And here we are today in 2025, and wow, we are not anywhere close to that. I'll tell you that much. That's a little bit disappointing. But hey, it's the new year. I'm going to make the best of it. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about a movie that I watched for the second time this last Halloween. I actually saw it about a year before in 2023. And I just had to mention this. You don't need to be watching this during Halloween, though it would be the perfect movie to kick off October with. It is a film from 1976 from horror icon, director, writer Don Coscarelli. It is called Kenny and Company. Yes, look at that. This is the Anchor Bay release of that. This film does not exist on Blu-ray, and it does not have a proper VHS release in the United States, though it actually did have a release in Japan. Now, apparently Japan is where this film kind of became a big deal and did have a cult following. In fact, it was pretty damn popular in Japan, which is kind of astounding because this is the type of film that I would have imagined in the United States would be a total beloved movie by so many people. It's got the vibe of, say, like The Wonder Years or something like that. It's that good. I would say that the characters in this film on many levels are just equally as good as, say, the characters in Stand By Me or even the Goonies. These kids have got a ton of goddamn charisma. And that is one of the main reasons why Kenny and Company is such a goddamn treasure. So Kenny's kind of the main character right here. You've got this guy, he's I think a year younger than these two. This guy Sherman is absolutely gut-busting, hilarious character here in this film. I can't say enough about him. And of course, Michael Baldwin of Phantasm fame, he stars in this as well. So it's basically a story of these three characters, Kenny kind of being slightly more front and center, but they all get a lot of really great screen time. These guys have such a unique bond. They are just a delight to watch all of the shenanigans unfold that these guys get into in 1976 here. It is the perfect time capsule. We've got a lot of kids now who are glued to their phones. Including adults like myself sometimes, which I'm not always proud of. This movie will give everyone, even us older people, a reminder of what life was like in simpler times back in the 1970s, especially being a kid. Very similar to the 80s. I grew up predominantly in the 80s. I was born in the 70s. But I mean, this film really captures that period of time perfectly. This film is not PC. A lot of this comedy in here right now probably wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to make a movie quite like this today. In fact, I would actually say that the closest film in comparison to this of a more recent film would be Good Boys, I think from 2019. I was a big fan of that movie. That movie actually took some risks as well. That kind of reminds me of Kenny and Company in a weird way, though this has got, I think, even way more heart to it. I think the comedy is even more razor sharp. Don Coscarelli was really on top of his game here. Writing this, I think he was like 18 or 19. When I saw Don Coscarelli, I saw him live at the Hollywood Theater here in Portland. They were doing a showing of Phantasm, the original Phantasm, the remastered version by J.J. Abrams, which Coscarelli said that he loved that version, this new version of Phantasm, so much because he took out the fishing line with the balls flying around, which I thought was really interesting. He was just like, God damn, that always bothered me so much. That was the first thing I was like, please take out the fishing line. So they were able to digitally take out the fishing line. So he was there. And then they also showed Phantasm 2 on 35 millimeter. It was great. And he was talking about Kenny and Company there. He had mentioned this was one of his first films and he made this before Phantasm. So he had mentioned that in this film, one of the most intriguing aspects is the finale. And the finale takes place on Halloween. Now, the whole film kind of leads up to Halloween. We're following these kids. There's not really a strong story narrative going on here. It's almost like a collection of vignettes, little stories of these kids and all of the things that they deal with throughout the school year. And it leads up to Halloween. It really is the perfect Halloween film. And in the finale, not much of a spoiler here, one of the adults did a makeshift haunted house in the neighborhood that they live in. And these kids enter that thing, and there's kind of a little bit of a sequence of light horror that goes on that Coscarelli had put together for this finale on Halloween. Now, he noted when I saw him live that was one of the biggest inspirations for him to do Phantasm was when he was showing Kenny and Company the reaction that people had during this sort of finale-ish sequence of this film in the haunted house, that he saw the reaction from the crowd, and there's actually a couple little jump scares in there that are kind of actually pretty effective. You wouldn't think something like that would be in Kenny and Company, but he was so thrilled by what he saw that it really drove him to make his next movie, Phantasm, and I'm sure glad that he did. So we're essentially following these three guys throughout the year leading up to Halloween and all of the trouble that they get into. And boy, do they get into a lot of trouble. They're dealing with bullies. They're riding all over on their skateboards, getting into trouble all around town. Great skateboard sequences. They're riding their bikes all over the place. They fall in love for the first time. They get their first crushes, and they also get their hearts broken. They deal with the loss of the family pet. Some of that is kind of heart-wrenching and hilarious at the same time. And they also see some naked women for the first time, reading dirty magazines like Playboy and stuff. They're all getting together and talking about sex and how they think babies are made and all sorts of just ridiculous scenarios. It is an absolute delight watching this unfold on the screen, and these three characters have such a strong bond. And they are so comedic, all of them. I mean, Michael Baldwin, who would have guessed he would have such great comic relief? In fact, all of these guys, this guy Sherman is probably the most hilarious one of all of them. So this really is like one of the best coming of age 1970s movies out there that I can think of. I put it up there with some of the best, and I'm really, really astounded that this film does not have a much bigger fan base, because it is that special in my opinion. Kenny and Company really delivers the heart, the comedy, and it really gives you a real authentic feeling peek into what life was like for kids back in the 1970s and 80s when, we didn't have parents helicoptering over them. You were free to run all around the neighborhood, go all around town on your bikes with your friends, and get into all sorts of mischief and adventures every single day. This features what it was like before all of this bullshit like YouTube, and I know that I'm on here talking about YouTube, so maybe a little bit hypocritical, but long before stuff like that, like Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, and all of that shit where we're trying to get followers. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to do here too, so kind of hypocritical, I know. But that's the world we live in now. But this features a slice of life that's very special and very different than anything that we're experiencing right now in the world. It was an absolute joy to be a kid in the 1980s. This film represents that slice of life perfectly. So that is what makes Kenny and Company such a goddamn treat to watch. So yes, this movie is actually available on YouTube. You can watch this thing for free. You could hunt this down. I'm not sure how much these go for. I don't think that they're in print anymore. Hopefully someone like Vinegar Syndrome will pick this up and release this on Blu-ray. In fact, I am so certain that that's going to happen soon. And people are just going to fall in love with Kenny and Company. And when I watched it with a group of like diehard Phantasm fans, the interesting thing was none of them knew a damn thing about Kenny and Company or had ever even heard of it. And if you're a fan of Phantasm, this is an absolute must-see, because you get Reggie Bannister in here as their school teacher. He's great. He's got some really great moments. And you get Michael Baldwin, and you get a bunch of other people who you may not even have realized were in the film. You see them and you say, oh my God, that's that person from Phantasm, or that's that person. So in a way, this is almost like a weird little prequel to Phantasm. I guess you could call it that. You could probably make a lot of connections between Kenny and Company and Phantasm. In fact, I think that would be a fun little video to do, where we kind of cover like the different threads of all of the characters in Kenny and Company and how that this actually could be a prequel to Phantasm. It would be fun to at least entertain that idea in a video someday. Maybe we'll do that right here. You've got to see this film if you love those kind of wild and crazy 70s and 80s kid films. This one serves it up in a really hilarious manner. All right, have a good one, and I will see you next time.